Rambam. We are in the Sefer Kinyan, the Book of Acquisitions. We are in the 25th chapter, Hilchos Mechira, the laws of sales. When a person sells an entity that has opportunities, he is not including the opportunities in the sale unless explicitly stated. What is implied? So a person who sold a house. He did not sell the patio around the house, even though it opens to the house. When does the above apply? When the patio is 4 cubits or more wide. If it's smaller than this, it is considered part of the house. Business law, if you recall, is all based on what's the word I'm looking for? What the normative way to do business in that city, that country, and so on. So it seems like back in the day, if you sold a house, it did not mean the exterior of the house, including the patio, unless it was a very small patio. Then it was part of the house. But then, unless, of course, if it was explicitly stated that you're selling the patio with the house, and that's not a question. The question is, what is meaning selling a house? So today, when we sell a house, we've got the property line that we're talking about, which means the backyard. So it'll mean everything that will be included. But back in the day, it wasn't included unless it was clearly delineated. Today, a house means the property of the house. Back then, it didn't mean that. Similarly, a loft that is above the house and it opens up to it through an opening in the ceiling of the house is considered to be part of the house. Why? Because it's the way to get to it is through the house, right? So like bring this idea further. When a person sells a house, he's not including the room that is located behind the house in the sale. So again, because back in the day there wasn't in City Hall, um, uh, you know, the city was divided and everybody had their plot of land that was clearly delineated. Then it was, although I guess that, yeah, you own the property and you're just selling the house on the property. Also, because back in the day, the reason why someone sold something is because they needed the cash. So it wasn't like today, people buy and sell, not because they need cash. And, but no, it's part of a business, real estate, right? It's called real estate. So back in the day, there wasn't so much the concept of real estate. Partially there was, but not like it is today. So therefore, you're selling the house if that's all you sold, unless again clearly stated otherwise. So that's why the house in the back is not considered part of it. This applies even if when it is including external borders of the property that the seller draws for the purchaser. Well, that's interesting. If you made a little map book I'm showing you, and it's in there, you don't have access to it because you're giving the property. I'm not clear why that would be. Nor does the sale include the roof if it is 4 cubits wide and possesses a guardrail that's 10 cubits high. Nor does it include the water receptacle hollowed out in the ground or the cistern that is built with a pit projecting above the ground. This applies even if he sold him the height and depth of the property, as we've explained above. Wow, I'm not clear on that, to be quite frank. Why would, like, if he sold him we learned yesterday that when you sell property, if you don't sell the heights, you don't sell the airspace or below the ground. You're not selling that. Again, unless clearly delineated. If you clearly delineate it, then of course it's sold. But I'm not clear over here. Why is that being held back? See if I can see something here. 1 second. Okay, so the idea over here is that the patio, the roof, and the guardrail on top. I'm not exactly clear how that's not part of a house. I understand, the patio, right? I understand um, the water receptacle that's outside of the house. I get that because they are entities that have a value inherently of their own. Because they have their own inherent value, therefore they're not included in the sale unless, again, clearly delineated. I'm not clear about the roof though. I guess because back in the day, this is what I didn't see here in the commentary, but back in the day, people used the roof for drying their fruits and different things that they would do on the roof, that therefore it had its own separate entity, right? And it had its own inherent value, even though the roof on the inside is, of course, protecting the house. But on top of the roof, it had its own value, especially if it had a guardrail. So it was, something that protected the person who was up there, and they could do business there, right? Drawing their, their figs or whatnot up there. So again, it's only because it's not delineated in the sale. So when we say a house, this is what means house, right? Very fascinating. The seller must purchase a path from the purchaser in order to gain access to the water receptacle or the cistern that he retained. For when a person sells property, he sells generously. As so you gave the pathway. So you've got to purchase that pathway. Or I guess not clear why you wouldn't. Likewise for the roof, they can have access to the roof. I guess there's okay. At the time of the original sale, the seller tells the purchaser, I'm selling you the house with the exception of the water receptacle or the cistern. He does not have to buy a path to the cistern. Ah, right. Before we are talking about that he didn't delineate, that he's keeping it. The fact that now he delineates and says clearly, I'm keeping these, so you don't have to then buy a path to the cistern because that's understood that I need that path in order that I can get to it. So when a person purchases a water receptacle or a cistern alone, the purchaser does not have to purchase a path. Instead, he may enter the seller's house and proceed as far as the cistern and fill his container. So this cistern sounds like it's in the house. Wow. I thought this was like outside. Uh-huh. So the Rama writes that if you can get access to the cistern by not going on the property or not going through the house, then you're not allowed to. But if the only way you can get to it is you have to go through the house to get, maybe it's in the backyard, right? And the only way to get the backyard is through the house, for example, then you're allowed to do that. Fascinating. And the following rules apply when there are two rooms, one inside the other. If one sold them to two separate people and gave them to two separate people, right? You gave it as a gift or you sold it to two separate people. Neither of the recipients has the right to make a path through the other's property because they're sold separately, right? It's not between me and the guy who I sold to. So there's an understanding there. But I sold to you and I sold to you. So they don't have an understanding between them. So they can't go through each other's, right? There was no sale between them. Needless to say, this applies to the original owner, gave the external room away and sold the inner room, right? Because again, it's to two different people. If I'm selling the house to you, and I'm saying I'm keeping the cistern, and the only way I can get to the cistern is to go through your house. So that's implied in the sale. But if I'm selling to two other people, they don't have a conversation between them. They have nothing between them. Or even if I sell you, I gave the external house, right? There's a house here and a house that's that includes this in the inside, right? Back in the day, that's the way, it was like a boarding room, but it was separate and you sold it separately. Yeah, of course, it could have been rented, but we're talking about here in a sale, right? So you have a house, and then it's like, here, small house inside the larger house, right? So I gave this away, the larger one. So smaller one, I sold it. So I have nothing to do with it now, right? This was given away, this was sold. So the guy he doesn't have to say, he doesn't have any access, right? If I were to sold the outer room and gave away the inner room, the recipient of the inner room has a right to make a path for himself through the outer room. The rationale is the person is more generous when he gives than when he sells. So this is when it was a gift and this is sold. But if it's the other way around, this was sold, this was gifted. So when I gifted this, I'm gifting generously that you can get the path. Okay, need to get that a little more through my head. Okay, I have to stop over here. We'll see you later on. Thank you.